Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and we're the IB English guys. Today is the first video of a series where we're going to look at the entire Paper 2 process from start to finish. This is a slice of our Paper 2 study guide that we wanted to offer on YouTube, and we think it'll be really useful for you and your teachers, but also it's a part of our whole school resources. Andrew, explain what these whole school resources are about.
Sure. Mr. Giles, the whole school resources are a compilation of our most powerful resources. Whether you're looking at Paper 1, Paper 2, individual oral, or higher level essay, these resources will guide you from beginning to end, step by step through the entire process. And in these resources, we subscribe to a we go, you go mentality. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so many of our resources, we will explain the process and then ask students to go through the process themselves, whether it's looking at a text and working with Paper 1, or maybe it's with Paper 2 like you'll see in this video where we talk about our thinking and what we do with a comparative essay, and then ask students to do that.
Tons of great models are provided in these whole school resources. We highly recommend that you check them out. We think they're super powerful. Mr. Giles, what do you say we get started on our series?
Sounds good. So our first thing we want to do when we're thinking about the Paper 2 is really have a deep understanding of what's required of us and how we're being assessed. So important. So the first thing is kind of the nuts and bolts. Why don't you talk about that, Andrew?
Yeah, the first thing we need to think about is, folks, this is a comparative essay. You are looking at two literary works where you were showing deep knowledge both of the content and form, and you were doing this in a comparative way, Mr. Giles.
That's right. It's an hour and 45 minutes, so time is of the essence. We want to think about the timing of this assessment. It's also the same task for SL and HL for some reason, but it's also the same for Lit and Lang Lit. So it's a literary response. It's only about literature. Very important.
And regardless of which course you're taking, on the Paper 2, you'll be given 4 questions. You will choose one to answer. Now, these questions are of a general nature, and they are applicable to a wide range of texts. Of course, we're all studying different texts globally, so these questions have to be general enough that they can be answered by all students.
That's right. You want to practice with lots of those questions. So now let's move on to the second part of the video, is where we're going to talk about the criteria. Again, very important to understand each criterion and then unpack that. So the first criterion is knowledge and understanding and interpretation. We want to think about how we can show that deep knowledge of the text by making references to the text, but also discussing subtleties of the text as much as we can.
Yeah, I like that. We want to have those nuances and subtleties to reach the higher mark bands, but also we must remember that this is a comparative response. So we have to, again, be comparing comparing the content for criterion A, thinking about how ideas are similar or different across the two different texts.
One more thing to add with that, it's all in relation to the question. So we're showing knowledge in relation to the question.
Yeah, you can't come in there and just spit out an essay that you've written beforehand. As an examiner, those are really easy to spot. Stay away from that.
That's right. So the next criterion is analysis and evaluation. We're going to think about both those words a little bit. So the first thing we want to think about is authorial choices, how much we can analyze and evaluate these authorial choices, stylistic features and literary features, and how they shape meaning.
Yeah,
Very important.
You might want to think about the literary form when you're doing this. Obviously, if you're studying drama, you'll be looking at stage directions and lighting and sound. If you're looking at poetry, you might be looking at rhythm and meter and rhyme, right? So the genre is really important when you think about those authorial choices. Now, also, not only do you have to identify and analyze those, but you have to be able to compare and contrast those and evaluate those. So you want to think about the author in text 1 and how this choice was advantageous or not with respect to the message. So you need to do some evaluation with criterion B as well.
And this is also a 10-point criterion, and I would say often it's the Achilles heel. It's something that students get caught up in the thematic ideas of the essay, what's required.
And then forget the how. You have to think about how did the author do it.
And so that's why we like the highlighting, where we highlight in yellow. Okay, the next criterion is 5 points, but it's also very important, and that is focus and organization. Notice the word focus. Focus means we're focusing on the question and that we have a strong argument.
Yeah, so you want to take the language of the question and be very liberal in how often you use that. You want synonyms and synonymous phrasing. You need to remind the examiner and yourself that you are answering a very precise, nuanced question, and you must stay in that question for the duration of the response.
And this guy loves topic sentences, and topic sentences of paragraphs need to really drive that paragraph, and it needs to have a structure. So again, all of that's important. The last thing is language. Again, being a writer and being a strong writer, keeping that academic register and using strong language, the more you've practiced writing beforehand, the more that language will come out and be strong. So be a good writer and be as precise with your language.
Okay, folks, now that you understand the assessment criteria, we really want you to get the most out of this series, so we have to give you a homework assignment. Mr. Giles, what are we doing?
We're going to ask you to read a story in advance of our next video, where we're going to examine a story called A Family Supper by Kazuo Ishiguro. Again, it's a short story. It's a very rich story by a Japanese writer that grew up in the UK. He's got a really unique perspective. So we want to, again, we're going to talk about Family Supper. So the best way for you to watch that video to understand is to have read it in advance.
Yeah, the idea is that we'll talk about a family supper and break that story down, and then you will go through a similar protocol with your chosen paper 2 text, okay? So folks, come on back for the next video, and we will go further into the series. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your paper 2.
Good luck, guys.